You know what you want. You've written it down. You've imagined it. You felt it. The vision is there, clear enough to move you, strong enough to haunt you. But somehow, it's still just a vision. You're not lazy. You try. You fall. You restart. You whisper to yourself, "This time, I mean it." And for a few days, maybe a few weeks, you hold on. But slowly, silently, the fire fades, and you're back in the space between. That strange, frustrating space, where goals live in notebooks, but not in reality, where dreams are vivid in your mind, but nowhere in your schedule. And in that space comes the shame, the quiet voice that says, "What's wrong with me? Why can't I just be consistent? Why do I always fall off?" It's not that you don't know what to do. It's that you can't seem to do it long enough, deep enough, consistently enough for it to change you. And so the cycle continues. But here's the truth that breaks the shame. You're not broken. You're just missing the bridge. Because between goals and accomplishment, between what you desire and what you become, there is only one crossing. Discipline. Not willpower. Not motivation. Not inspiration. Discipline. The quiet, daily decision to return to what matters, even when it's not exciting, even when no one's watching, even when it's hard. And this isn't a punishment. It's a gift. Discipline is not the enemy of freedom. It's the beginning of it. Stephen Covey understood this deeply. Long before he became one of the world's most respected voices in personal leadership, he struggled with the same invisible war. The gap between what he believed in and what he consistently lived. He realized that no amount of clarity, no level of intention, no depth of vision would matter. Without the integrity to act again and again in alignment with that vision. That's what discipline is. It's not about force. It's about integrity in motion. You don't need another motivation video. You don't need to feel more pumped. What you need is a framework for becoming the kind of person who does what matters, even when it's not convenient. And discipline is the bridge. It's how you walk your dreams into daylight. It's how you earn the identity you've been writing about in journals. It's how you stop being a collector of goals and start becoming the kind of person who finishes what they start. So this video isn't about trying harder. It's about anchoring deeper. You already know what you want. Now, it's time to build the bridge that leads there. And brick by brick, decision by decision, that bridge will not only get you to your goals, it will transform who you are on the way. Because discipline doesn't just change your results. It changes you. If you're ready to stop starting over and finally build the bridge between your goals and your results, subscribe now. This is where that journey begins. We live in a world obsessed with motivation. Quotes, videos, playlists, morning routines. Everywhere you look, someone is promising you the spark that will finally make you move. But here's the hidden truth no one likes to say out loud. Motivation is not enough. It fades. It fluctuates. It disappears the moment life gets loud or hard or boring. And most people spend their lives chasing the feeling instead of building the foundation. Discipline is that foundation. And that's where most people fall. They wait to feel ready. They wait for clarity, for momentum, for a sign. But discipline doesn't wait. Discipline moves. Discipline acts when it's inconvenient, when it's uncomfortable, when every excuse is screaming. Because discipline isn't emotional. It's architectural. It's the bridge between who you are now and who you're trying to become. Stephen Covey understood this better than most. His teachings weren't about grinding harder or doing more for the sake of achievement. He spoke about building a life based on principles, not pressure, on clarity, not chaos. And at the core of that life is one undeniable truth. You cannot live aligned with your values if you do not have the discipline to protect them. You may know what matters most, but if you don't act on it consistently, it doesn't shape your life. Covey saw this not just as a practical issue, but a moral one. He believed that discipline is a form of integrity, a daily choice to align your behavior with your deepest convictions. That's why he taught the principle of private victory before public success. In his words, "Until a person can say deeply and honestly, 'I am what I am today because of the choices I made yesterday,' that person cannot say, 'I choose otherwise.'" Discipline is the language of ownership. It says, "This is my responsibility. This is my choice. And this is who I'm becoming, regardless of how I feel right now." Because anyone can act when it's easy. Anyone can start something when they're inspired. But transformation belongs to those who act in the silence. When no one is watching, when motivation is gone, when it's just you and the decision in front of you. This is the real reason why your goals haven't become accomplishments. Not because you're weak, not because you lack vision, but because you haven't learned to trust the process of discipline more than the feeling of motivation. Covey's framework offers something rare. A structure that doesn't depend on mood or hype. It asks you to live from principles, values that don't shift with circumstance. He didn't say, "Be productive." He said, "Put first things first." That's what discipline is. Choosing what matters most over what feels urgent. Protecting your purpose instead of reacting to pressure. So if you failed before good, it means you're human. It means you're trying. But let's get honest about what's been missing. You didn't need more inspiration. You needed identity-based discipline. Not discipline fueled by guilt or fear or performance, but discipline that flows from your core values. You needed a reason deeper than willpower. You needed a bridge, not a spark. And that's what this video is here to help you build. Because the only way to reach your goals, the only way to live the life you've already imagined, is to build that bridge. One choice at a time. One commitment at a time. One day of showing up at a time. And if you walk that path long enough, something incredible happens. Discipline stops feeling like effort. It starts feeling like alignment. You're no longer forcing yourself to behave a certain way. You're simply becoming someone who naturally lives that way. That's when everything shifts. Stephen Covey didn't talk about discipline the way most people do. He didn't shout about grinding harder or waking up at 4 a.m. He didn't reduce discipline to a willpower contest or a war against distraction. Instead, Covey saw discipline as a quiet form of integrity, a choice, deeply personal and profoundly powerful, to act in alignment with your values, even when no one is watching. To him, discipline wasn't about pressure. It was about principle. In the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the bridge between goals and results is built on 3 core habits, and discipline is the thread that weaves them together. Habit 1. Be proactive. You are not a product of your environment. You are a product of your decisions. Habit 2. Begin with the end in mind. You must know where you're going before discipline even has direction. Habit 3. Put first things first. You must do what matters most, especially when it's not urgent. This third habit is where discipline lives. Because once you know your priorities, discipline becomes the guardian of those priorities. Covey taught that most people spend their lives trapped in urgency, reacting to whatever is loudest, fastest, or most demanding. They confuse movement with progress and confuse being busy with being effective. But those who master habit 3, they step into a different kind of power, the ability to say no to what's urgent in order to say yes to what's important. And that takes discipline. He described this habit not as time management, but as self-management. Because it's not about controlling your schedule. It's about choosing your focus with intention. He once wrote, "Discipline derives from the Latin root disciplina, meaning to learn. A disciple is a learner. Discipline is not control, it's training." So what are you training for? To live a life built on reaction, or a life built on purpose? This is the core of Covey's approach. Discipline is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters, even when everything around you demands something else. And that kind of discipline requires a shift in identity. You stop asking, "How can I force myself to do this?" And you start asking, "What would a person of discipline do in this moment?" That's how discipline becomes natural. Not because it's easy, but because it's aligned with who you are choosing to become. Covey believed that most people fail not because of effort, but because they never built a system around what matters most. And that system, for him, always came back to the internal. Discipline wasn't something you imposed on yourself. It was something you grew from within. He called it the private victory, the moment when you gain control not over the world, but over yourself. Your impulses, your patterns, your time, your focus. Only after that private victory, Covey said, can the public victories come, the achievements, the impact, the success. Because discipline is not just a bridge between where you are and where you want to go. It's the ground beneath your feet, the daily choice to walk in alignment with your highest values, no matter how loud the world becomes. So if you've struggled to stay consistent, if you've fallen off track again and again, you don't need shame. You don't need to push harder. You need a shift from reacting to designing, from trying harder to becoming wiser, from chasing discipline to living it one moment at a time. That's what Covey taught. That's what builds the bridge. What about you? What important but not urgent area of your life have you been avoiding? And how would your life change if you gave it disciplined attention this week? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every one. If discipline is the bridge between your goals and your accomplishments, then the question becomes, how do you build that bridge? Not once, not when life is perfect, but daily, in the middle of chaos, distractions, stress, and doubt. Stephen Covey didn't offer hacks. He offered principles, timeless truths you could build your life on. And when it comes to discipline, his practical framework begins with one powerful shift. You don't manage time. You manage yourself. So let's stop pretending we need more hours. Let's start designing a life where the hours we have are aligned with what matters most. Here's a simple yet powerful 4-step process, drawn from Covey's Habit 3. Put first things first and reimagine for the daily practice of discipline. Step 1. Clarify what matters most. You can't discipline yourself around everything. You have to choose. Covey called this identifying your true north, your core values, your personal mission, the things that matter even when no one's looking. Ask yourself, what are the 3 most important priorities in my life right now? If I only had 1 hour a day to build my future, where would I invest it? What's been silently calling for my attention, but keeps getting postponed? Your answers define the center of your discipline. Without this, you'll be busy, but not aligned. Active, but not effective. Step 2. Schedule the important before the urgent. This is where most people fail. They wake up and immediately respond to the loudest thing. Notifications, emails, messages. Then the day's gone, and the important work never happened. Covey warned. The key is not to prioritize your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. So here's the rule. Protect the important like it's an appointment you cannot break. If writing is part of your purpose, block 30 minutes for it first. If your health matters, don't fit it around your work. Build your work around your health. Discipline is not willpower. It's planning. It's designing your day to reflect your values. And that design starts with your calendar. Step 3. Use the big rocks method. Covey illustrated this with a powerful metaphor. Imagine you have a jar, and you need to fill it with big rocks, your highest priorities. Pebbles, less important tasks. Sand, daily distractions. If you start with the sand, you won't have space for the big rocks. But if you start with the big rocks, the pebbles and sand will still fit around them. That's life. So here's the application. Every week, identify 3 big rocks. Things that align with your purpose and require discipline. Put them in your schedule first. Then let everything else adjust. This one shift can change your entire rhythm. Step 4. Track identity, not just tasks. Most productivity systems make you check off boxes. But discipline isn't just about tasks. It's about identity. At the end of each day, reflect. Did I act like the person I'm becoming? Where did I honor my values, and where did I react to pressure? What did today teach me about who I'm becoming? This turns discipline into a form of self-leadership, not self-punishment. You stop asking, "Did I finish everything?" and start asking, "Did I become someone I respect today?" That's the difference. Discipline isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent with your highest values, even when it's hard. It's not about control. It's about design. It's about building a bridge, one choice at a time, from intention to reality. From the life you've imagined to the life you actually live. And if you commit to these 4 steps daily, quietly, even imperfectly, your entire identity will begin to shift. You'll stop breaking promises to yourself. You'll stop chasing momentum. You'll stop negotiating with your priorities. And that's when discipline becomes your default. Not because life got easier, but because you got aligned. You've tried before. You've promised yourself you'd change. You've bought the planner. You've joined the challenge. You've marked day 1. And then life happened. A bad night of sleep. A sudden crisis. A wave of doubt. And just like that, the streak broke. The rhythm vanished. And more than losing progress, you lost something deeper. You lost trust in yourself. But what if that failure wasn't the real problem? What if the real damage comes after? In the way you speak to yourself. In the story you write about who you are because of it? Because here's the truth. Discipline is not just about what you do. It's about what you believe. And if you believe that you're someone who always breaks promises, someone who never finishes, someone who just isn't built for consistency, then discipline will always feel like a costume you're trying to wear, instead of a part of who you are. This is where transformation must begin, not with another habit, but with a deeper level of honesty. Stephen Covey taught that between every stimulus and every response, there is a space, and in that space lies your power to choose. But before you can choose discipline, you have to reclaim that space. Because most of us don't fail from lack of discipline. We fail from living in a story that says we are incapable of it. Covey called this living by scripts. Old, inherited, unconscious narratives that guide our decisions without us even realizing. Scripts like, "I'm just not consistent. I need someone else to hold me accountable. I always fall off. I do better under pressure." And yet, deep down, you feel the truth trying to surface. You are not that story. You are the one who chooses whether or not it continues. So here's the invitation. Before you try to change your actions, pause and ask yourself, what do I actually believe about discipline? Do I see it as punishment? Do I associate it with shame? Do I fear that being consistent means becoming boring, robotic, or rigid? Or can I begin to see discipline as a form of self-respect? As a sacred promise between who I am and who I'm becoming? This shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Because once you stop trying to force yourself into discipline and start allowing yourself to return to it, not out of guilt, but out of alignment, you begin to trust yourself again. And trust is the foundation of every change that lasts. So if you've failed, forgive it. If you've quit, begin again. Not with pressure, but with clarity. This is not about getting it perfect. It's about being willing to live from a different story. A story where discipline is not something you chase, but something you remember. Because you were born with the capacity for consistency. It's in you. It always was. It just got buried under noise, fear, and false urgency. But now you see it. And now, you get to choose differently. If that choice speaks to something inside you. If this message helped you see yourself and your habits in a new light, take a moment to like this video. To mark this moment as the one where your story about discipline quietly changed. Discipline becomes effortless the moment it becomes part of your identity. Not something you have to summon. Not something you chase in bursts of motivation. But something that flows out of who you believe you are. This is where everything changes. Because when your identity shifts, your behavior doesn't need to be forced. It becomes instinct. Stephen Covey believed that all lasting change begins with who, not what. Who you are shapes what you do, not the other way around. And the reason so many people struggle with consistency is not because they're weak or unmotivated. It's because they're trying to build new habits while holding on to an old identity. You cannot live like a disciplined person while thinking like someone who always quits. You cannot act like someone with focus while telling yourself you're always distracted. You cannot step into a higher standard while clinging to a lower self-image. That's why the bridge between goals and accomplishment is not just made of habits. It's built from belief. Belief in a new version of you. One that lives in alignment, not in cycles of starting and stopping. And here's the paradox. Discipline doesn't just flow from identity. It also builds it. Every time you act with discipline, even in small things, you reinforce the message. This is who I am now. You're not just doing the task. You're proving something to yourself. You're casting a vote for a new identity. One small act at a time. Stephen Covey taught that private victories always precede public ones. That inner alignment comes before outer success. And the truest form of discipline is not public accountability or visible achievement. It's how you show up for yourself when no one else is watching. Waking up early, not to impress anyone, but because the future version of you lives that way. Choosing to finish, not because it's urgent, but because you said you would. Saying no, not out of fear, but out of reverence for your priorities. That kind of discipline doesn't come from pressure. It comes from self-respect. It says, I know who I am, and I will not betray that for a quick escape. And when that identity begins to take root, you no longer have to fight for discipline every day. You simply return to it. You return to yourself. It's not that every choice becomes easy. It's that every choice becomes clear. Because you're no longer wondering if you're that person. You've already decided. Discipline then becomes less about resistance and more about coherence. Less about effort and more about alignment. You begin to notice a quiet shift. You're not making decisions based on energy. You're making them based on identity. You no longer need to psych yourself up to act. You just ask one question. What does someone like me do right now? Someone who finishes what they start. Someone who protects what matters. Someone who lives with inner clarity, not outer pressure. And then you act. Not to earn that identity, but to express it. That's how discipline becomes sustainable. That's how it becomes effortless. Because it's no longer a strategy. It's a reflection of someone who is no longer trying to change their life, but is already living as the person who does. There is no applause for the first day you choose discipline. No spotlight. No standing ovation. Just you. And a decision. A quiet moment where you say, I won't break this promise today. Not because anyone is watching. Not because it feels easy. But because you're becoming someone who keeps going. That's the bridge. Not the one you run across in victory, but the one you build, one stone, one step, one small act of integrity at a time. Discipline isn't dramatic. It's sacred. It doesn't rush. It roots. It becomes the quiet force holding your life together. When everything else threatens to scatter you. It becomes the language you speak when motivation forgets your name. It becomes the rhythm that moves you forward when you feel like turning back. Stephen Covey never said discipline would be easy, but he promised it would be worth it. Because every day you choose discipline, you reinforce this truth. You are not your past. You are not your patterns. You are not your potential. You are your choices made daily in silence with purpose. And the more you choose from that place, the more your life begins to resemble your vision. Not just in results, but in rhythm. Not just in success, but in wholeness. So if you've been waiting for the right time, this is it. Not next Monday. Not the first of the month. Not when the conditions are perfect. Right now. Because the bridge doesn't appear when you arrive. It forms beneath your feet as you begin walking. One act of discipline. One moment of alignment. One decision that says, this is who I am now. And maybe you'll slip. Maybe you'll forget. That's okay. Discipline isn't perfection. It's the return. It's the recovery. It's the refusal to let one off day become your story. You are allowed to begin again. Not because you failed, but because you remembered. And now you walk differently. not rushed, not desperate, but with quiet confidence in the person you are becoming. You don't need to chase your goals anymore. You've built the bridge. Now all that's left is to keep walking. If this message spoke to you today, give it a like to honor the version of you who's choosing differently. And if you haven't already, subscribe. This space is for people who are ready to stop performing and start living with intention. For those who are done negotiating with their future. And if you're ready to go deeper, the next step is waiting. In the next video, we'll explore how to protect your purpose in a world that pulls you in every direction now. Because once you've found your path, the challenge is staying on it. Watch that now, and I'll meet you on the other side of the noise.